The Biden administration cancels prominent oil and gas leases. One environmentalist said the announcement was good for the climate, which can't handle new oil and gas development. Well, let's get to the nuance here. Quote, due to a lack of industry interest in leasing in the area, the department will not move forward with the proposed Cook Inlet OCS oil and gas lease sale 258, a Department of Interior spokesperson told Fox Business. However, there's also the Department of Interior ending 2 leases for the Gulf of Mexico region because of conflicting court rulings that impacted work on these proposed lease sales. So I'm not going to come out here and try and play some tribal nonsense where it's like Joe Biden arbitrarily just destroyed an oil and gas lease. There's actually questions about whether or not these companies are trying to drill for oil. But I wonder, when you get a president like Joe Biden, who actually shuts down an oil pipeline at this time, how many companies feel safe investing tons of money in new infrastructure that Joe Biden might turn around and just shutter overnight without due process, just executive order, you're done? Why would an oil and gas company want to go build in Alaska when the president has already shown he will destroy your investment? This is bad leadership.
I agree with that, actually. I'm not a huge advocate of burning unlimited fossil fuel without attempting to recover the carbon, but it seems like maybe he's incentivizing people to get off oil, but it's like just a dumb way to do it. Like, I'll destroy everything so you stop using it. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, so in the Gulf instance, you've got environmentalists. We just had that story about the electrical plant shutting down. I think it was called Talon, because they said regulations on climate change. So they're like, we're shutting down. Yo, I'll tell you this. You think the baby food shortage is bad? Let me just lay it out for everybody, because they're like, what did Joe Biden do to make the gas prices go up? All these fact checkers are like, it's not true. Joe Biden bans oil and gas leases on federal lands. Speculation goes up because supply is expected to be diminished in the U.S. He just shuts down the Keystone Pipeline. How much money did that cost the oil industry? A lot. And I'm not saying I like the oil industry, guys. Then all of a sudden they're like, why aren't they investing to build new oil drilling up in Alaska? It's their fault we're not getting any of this stuff done. Why would anyone want to invest in the United States energy production when Joe Biden has shown he has complete disdain for it? You're going to lose all your money. Go build in Saudi Arabia, or go build in Qatar and build that pipeline or whatever.
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's really childish, right? I mean, there's a reason. I'm not generally like this Russia hawk or whatever, but Russia literally did fund green energy groups in the United States to try and push against domestic oil production, which is kind of an obvious thing to do from their perspective, because, hey, that allows them to kind of corner the market and increases demand for their natural resources, which they're perfectly happy to drill in whatever way they want to see fit. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of the information. I don't know that the cancellation of these leases was more about them like giving up on a couple of like ones that had some conflicting court rulings about them.
Yeah, it was the Gulf.
And there was like even Democrats, and I think there was like Tim Kaine was on giving a speech about, hey, we really need to increase production here. I don't know if you guys are trying hard enough here in the administration. Like, I don't know. I feel like we're in a phase where it's like you've got, I think the White House probably is now, because they're so full bore towards Ukraine, anti-Russia, they're like, okay, fine, we'll let the oil and gas leases run. But maybe the message hasn't trickled down to the bureaucrats yet.
Take a look at this. AAA gas prices. $4.41.
I guarantee you the Biden White House does not like this, right? Like there are a lot of things. They're conniving, they're obnoxious, but they're not complete morons. So they do know that, gas prices at this level will lead to them losing power.
Well, no. I mean, the dudes who are engaged in a bank heist are not stupid. But why would you assume that they're looking out for your best interests?
No, they're not, right? Like that's I don't assume that they're looking out for their best interests. I just know we're 6 months out of an election, and
the Joe Biden election to me
win.
would be like John Dillinger like trying to get appointed as the head of a bank branch, and people being like, I never heard of this guy, he sounds great, and we're like, please do not give this guy, I'm telling you he's going to loot the coffers. And they're like, I don't know, he looks trustworthy, cool name too. And then all of a sudden, the bank is failing, and you're like, I can't believe this is happening. Well, Joe Biden's crooked. He's always been crooked. You put a crooked guy in charge, crooked things happen. And now all these people are like, why is gas higher than it's ever been?
Yeah.
They try to play the game. It's not Joe Biden's fault. It is Vladimir Putin and the unprecedented pandemic. And it's like, dude, if Joe Biden didn't cancel Keystone, if he didn't ban oil and gas leases on federal lands, if they weren't making the moves they're making now, my point, I'll just summarize it with this. If Donald Trump was president, he would be like, he'd be yelling, "Get me the head of these companies. I want them in here right now. What's going on? They're making me look bad. We need to get these prices down." And they would have a meeting. You'd hear in the press that the CEOs of these companies are coming to the Oval Office. Donald Trump would be like, "What do we got to do to get you producing?" They'd say, "These regulations are impeding us." And he'd be like, "We're getting rid of them. Get the oil baby drill." And the prices would be going down.
And then they'd be fracking. I heard earthquakes have gone up because of fracking. If you look at like Oklahoma earthquakes, where there's like no earthquakes, all of a sudden since they started fracking, you see massive amounts of microquakes. They're not huge, but
that's a good thing.
Of course, earthquakes are always fantastic. What's happening is they're taking liquid out of the earth, and then it's leaving like a craterous vacuum in there, and then the crust just ends up slipping on itself.
Well, they're injecting hydraulic fluid.
Yeah, and they inject weird chemicals back in.
I mean, just look on the bright side. Now that we know we're creating earthquakes, maybe we can create some kind of earthquake generator.
A piezoelectric
that's right.
energy producer.
Yeah. I think we'll get even more energy out of it.
That's more brilliant than ever
Like
before.
that.
Turning problems into solutions that we are better than what we had at the beginning is a human thing. We've done it in the past.
That's true.
It would be funny if, like, have you guys ever seen those flashlights where you beat them and they charge?
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Show me that again.
You beat them?
Oh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
They have a magnet in it, and there's a copper coil, and when you make the motion, it throws the magnet back and forth, which then generates a current and will charge up the battery. So all you got to do that's not piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity is like molecular vibration or something.
It's friction-based energy.
So once the earthquake happens, you have all these magnets bouncing up and down in the coils, and you're just generating free energy. So after you get the oil, or I'm sorry, the gas, was it shale? Is it shale oil actually? Is it oil? I don't know, whatever. After you extract the fossil fuels,
I think so.
And everything's crumbling all around you, you just have the electrical generation and you extract more energy. It's perfect.
I think that's actually a really good idea.
We should see if we can do that.
It's just probably going to take some years.
I'm good with fracking now.
Yeah.
Wow, if we could use
this sounds like Russian disinformation.
It does, yeah.
But I mean, your point earlier about the Russian government sending funding towards certain environmental groups to try to discourage the production of oil in the United States is so depressing, and it's just so indicative of how abysmally easily the population and the political system is influenced in this country by people who understand our way of thinking. So the American government does not really understand the way Russian culture operates, the way Russians think, or the way that the Chinese population thinks, but they actually understand the way we think really, really well, to the point where we are extremely easy for them to manipulate. Like, yes, climate change. No, use other people's oil. Yes, stop making in your own country. Yeah, it's like, but you're still using the fossil fuels. You're still using them. Do they not cause pollution if they come from Russia? It's ridiculous. The whole
we
thing
need to invade Alaska.
Yes.
I agree.
Four of us?
It's
five of us?
We need to claim it.
Let's go.
We own it though.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Like we invade it for oil.
Like
Oh,
British
right,
invasion, yeah.
right. Let it secede and then reinvade it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, we
I think
send in the troops and then
Let's
liberate Alaska.
I've talked about doing that to California, right? You let it secede, you invade it, you occupy it,
Yeah.
you turn it into a colony, like an old school territory with no electoral votes, and we've solved most of the country's problems.
So many.
Yeah,
there was
they're subjects.
There was a
No longer
fantastic Babylon Bee headline a while ago. It was Biden gives Alaska back to Russia so they can drill for oil there now. Or like, so we can drill for oil there now.
Right. I do like that idea of California being it's like, oh no, they seceded. All right, take it back.
It's ours now.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a colony.
You made an interesting point,
The
Seamus,
natives, they're called Native American. They're Native Californians.
Native Americans, yeah.
Oh yeah, that people are there. I think you mentioned that politicians are easily swayed. Is that
Like
what you were saying
our
earlier?
political system is very easily swayed
Yeah.
if you understand the way people
You really
think.
need a strong leader. Like Biden's not a strong. He's a weak-minded older man that seems to be kind of disparate. But
Stop
if you
being
have a
nice.
strong mind, young person, that can also be dangerous because then they don't listen. You don't want someone that doesn't listen. But you need someone that isn't swayed by nonsense or the wind. Yeah, they're a representative, but they still have to have a strong mind.
Trump was swayed by a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, but here's
John Bolton.
To your point, Ian, you want someone, right? So you want someone ideally who's strong-minded and has a solid moral compass. You don't want someone who's weak-minded with a solid moral compass, right? You don't want someone who's strong-minded with a poor moral compass. We have someone who's weak-minded and has a poor moral compass.
Yeah, he was a plagiarist in 1988. He had to drop out of the presidential election because he was found plagiarizing in his presidential campaign.
Just look up Biden Inc. by Politico, and they show you this map showing how every time he gets appointed to some position, his brother gets rich off of it. It's like, oh, something like that. It's like, what a coincidence. Obama puts him in charge of Iraq, and then all of a sudden his brother's getting contracts in Iraq.
No, I think it's just a good sign that he's doing, fortune has smiled upon him because he's such a good guy.
It makes sense. I mean, they're brothers. They're both equally talented. It's no surprise that his brother is doing so well in the exact same areas.
Yeah, if his brother was awesome, and then I don't care if he's his brother or not.
Well, why was his brother the first one in the Biden family to attend college?
Is that true?
He goes, no, that was his speech he played. I was like, why am I the first Biden to attend college? Is hilarious because it's one thing to plagiarize a speech as a politician and take some sort of banal utterance about freedom or equality or these things that usually come up in political speeches. He literally took someone's background story. Like this, there was a British politician talking about
Neil Kinnock, yeah.
How he was like the first in his family to go to college and they were working class, and Biden literally gives the guy's speech with a couple details changed. It's
and people are like,
echoes of Biden's 1987 plagiarism scandal continue to reverberate from, this is Washington Post. You mentioned Neil Kinnock. How is he involved in the plagiarism scandal?
Well, that's whose speeches Biden plagiarized, right? Neil Kinnock was like a labor, he was like a leader of the opposition in Britain, right? During Margaret Thatcher, when Margaret Thatcher was prime minister. And literally, Kinnock had just given these speeches as leader, and Biden's like, that's a really good speech.
And it's funny, and then after he heard Biden plagiarize them, he went, come on, man.
And then Joe Biden was like, I like that.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
We got an article here from The Guardian.
Schroeder Nash job under pressure.
Neil Kinnock on Biden's plagiarism scandal, in quotes, and why he deserves to win. Quote, Joe's an honest guy. This is the guy who he plagiarized.
No way.
Said that about him.
That's insane.
Are we sure Biden didn't put those words in his mouth
What
instead of the other way
world
around for once?
Build Back Better was plagiarized.
It's September 2020 when that article came out. I bet it was just political propaganda because the guy hated Trump.
Yeah. Build Back Better was plagiarized, and I think it was Boris Johnson called him out, I think, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, Build Back Better, that's our thing, and Joe Biden started using it.
That's hilarious.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just so
They
crazy.
just
He's like, come on, man. When I made Brexit happen, no. He's hysterical. It's sad. And we laugh at it, but at the same time, you sort of have to. The reality is, this man is president of the United States. This is the actual sitting president of the United States.
The thing is, he is not right for that spot because when you're the VP for 2 terms, you run for president next. That every time.
It's very true.
It's a very
And he
good
was
point.
nowhere, gone, totally disinterested.
And like Obama didn't want him to, right? That's the
Right.
thing. Like Obama sort of settled on Biden, but like
Didn't he call him an F up?
You just don't underestimate his capability to screw things up,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like
You don't have to do this, Joe.
Hold on, though. You guys aren't being fair. Biden stepped down because he's a humble man, and then when he saw Charlottesville happen, he said, I need to run for president.
That's right.
That's right.
He
Yeah.
felt the fires within.
I wonder who actually said that first.
Yeah.
That's such a ridiculous
There's like
story.
some lesser known Democrat who actually said that, and he was like, that's pretty good, man.
That's hysterical. That's so insane. Like, as if Joe Biden actually, he saw that happen, and he's like, you know what? This is a good opportunity to make my family some more money.
It would actually be really funny if it was true. It would be funnier if it really was like Joe Biden sitting in his basement, like flipping channels, and then he sees like CNN, and he's like, "Oh, I have to run for president!" And then he like stands up, and then he like shuffles out of with his in his towel, and then his dog chases.
it's like we have a
after him, and slips and
non-entity as
falls.
president, right? Like, do
Yeah.
you even think no one thinks he's actually running the country?
Oh, I
No.
do.
Like,
Sort
Do
of.
you?
sort of. Like, it's
No.
his people.
I don't think it's his people.
I think
think
his geriatric nurse is making the calls.
Yeah. And so it's like it's like one of those old tropes where the old man's in the bed and like the nurse is sitting there and she's like, Biden says he wants to shut down oil leases. And they're like, well, I guess Biden wants it. And like Kamala walks out like, well, everyone trusts his nurse.
Yeah, man. His
It's
Aunt
like
Tifa.
Yeah,
who was the dude who was whispering into the in Lord of the
Grimo
Rings?
Worm tongue.
Yeah.
Worm tongue.
Grimo-
Dude,
Moses-
Yeah.
there's
Grimo
historical
words.
precedent for that. That happened. Woodrow Wilson was president, and he had a stroke when he was negotiating Versailles, and his wife basically ran the country for the remainder of his term.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's real.
So like Kamala is basically worm tongue. That was
Yeah.
his name? Yeah. And so Biden's sitting there like, brr. And then she's like, he says, shut down the gas leases. What do you say, Mr. President? Yeah. And then someone should make the meme. Then Trump returns the return of the king.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you think, Will, do you think that there's a political solution to the chaos, or do you look towards the private sector more?
To what chaos?
Having Biden as president, because
Yeah, I mean, yes, there's a political solution to having Biden as president, right? Kick him out. Right?
But how can we? Do you think that's even politically possible?
Sure. I mean, not in the short term, right? But like, you can I mean, you're going to have Democrats in charge of the White House and therefore the agencies for the next 2 years. There's not really doing anything about it until you elect a Republican and things get better. In terms of like a lot of these specific problems, I mean, there's no, I don't know. I worked for the Seasteading Institute. You want to have like privately created like countries or something and compete that way.
Not getting them out. I'm not talking about getting them out. I'm just talking about we're in a situation where we have no leadership. I feel like there's very, very little to no leadership in the country. So what would be a short-term solution? Do you see one politically?
No, there's no short-term solution to like a lack of leadership from the White House. I mean, we're just going to have to deal with that. Like, but we've got like 2.5 more years of Brezhnev or whatever, basically, and then we'll have a chance to actually replace him.
What's Brezhnev?
Brezhnev was like the Soviet leader who was very in a similar situation to Biden, where he was just very, very old, very, very sick, and there were all these people talking about how healthy and vigorous he was in Pravda, right? Like he was notorious for, just like being kind of, Russia had a really sclerotic decline at that point. The guys who were running it were all the old revolutionaries who were now really old.
Whoa.
Well,
Sorry.
and you sort of mentioned the propaganda arm doing everything they could to make him sound as if he was competent and in good health. And they're still doing that with Joe Biden, even though we see footage of the man speaking. And it's abundantly clear to anyone who observes it that the man is not in his right mind. He wasn't in his right mind during the primaries.
When I went to Ohio to hang out with my parents like over Christmas last year, I was like, yeah, Joe Biden's a mess. And they were like, no, Joe Biden's great. And I was like, yeah, he's experiencing mental cognitive decline. And they're like, yeah.
Everyone knows it.
They're like, there's that. Yeah.
You just put a video clip of him speaking 10 years ago, right? 2012, like when Obama was president. Like perfectly articulate, clear, smooth cadence.
I wouldn't say smooth. I mean, more articulate, but his gaffes then were outrageous as well.
Sure, but he didn't stumble over his
Agreed.
words. He had more energy. It sounded like a normal politician speaking in a lot of ways, right? It doesn't sound like that anymore.
No,
I think that's
his
true.
4 years out of the spotlight he changed drastically in those 4 years.
Yeah, it's sundowning.
Is that what it's called?
When you get older, like you start losing it. Your
the
brain's
afternoon.
in the afternoon as you're up. So here's this guy. He wakes up in the morning and he's like, I'm ready to get it. And then within a few hours, like, turn on the shop of pressure.
Yep.
Yeah,
Can't
well,
talk anymore.
so the argument the media's tried to make too, and I don't hear this as often because I think even they realized how ridiculous it was, but that he just has a speech impediment. This is something we heard quite frequently. No, I know. Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I did a cartoon about this called Joe Biden's Speech Therapist, but basically the idea is like a speech impediment doesn't make you say poor kids are just as bright and talented as white kids. That's not how speech impediments work. Like that's a gaffe. The man says
hold
stupid
on.
things.
Tourette's, maybe.
I guess, but is that would you consider that a speech impediment? How is that defined? I'm
I
not
guess you're
sure.
right. I guess it's like
I know, but they would say that he had a stutter. Like it was his stutter that would cause him to say these things. Dude, that's not how a stutter works.
Yeah.
No, it's just a stutter that just suddenly emerges at 78 years old, and in addition to you suddenly just having trouble making sense.
People fall for this stuff.
I know. Well, and they'll. The stutter argument was useful because what it allowed for them to do was pretend like there wasn't a problem, but also call you mean for pointing out the problem. So when we acknowledge that Biden can't speak straight, in that even in his State of the Union address, which was the best he sounded somewhat drunk. He was slurring his words. If you point that out, people could say, hey, that's really mean and disrespectful to say about the president, but it's also true. It's only mean if you acknowledge that it's true. Like, that's not a mean thing to say about someone if it isn't the case.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.